Thanks for having me. Sorry I'm late, I dropped off my kids at school. Late day on Fridays, like 7, 11, so I had to be a little bit late for the start of the class. There's a reason why I got into this work. I was aware of the possibility of dangerous climate change for a long time, because it's been a possibility for a long time. I probably heard about it 25, 30 years ago, and in the beginning it was like, interesting, I hope it's not true. And about 10, 15 years ago, it became really clear that the science was coming in to test out all the, try to work on all the questions. And it was becoming clearer and clearer that climate change was a problem, a really serious problem. So I started to just on my own study. It wasn't my background. I have a geography background, so I got some introduction to climate science, but I was mainly on the social science side. But at least in geography, we work on both of those things. But I thought it was just important enough to start to work on. So you might say, like, why is somebody who's an Asian American studies professor working on climate change? It's because Asian Americans are earthlings, and we have to deal with it. So that is why I am doing this. So, climate change. One was, I always learned to, what do we call it? Right? You say climate change, and you go, well, that's true, and that's been the most neutral term scientific communities use. But climate has always changed, right? So it doesn't have the edge to it. And I think you have the backbone. So some of this I think you already have. So if I'm dwelling too long with something, just give me a signal to move it on. So I'm going to give a background on climate change, kind of global. I'm going to focus on issues of inequality in relationship to the whole question on a global scale, then bring it down to California, and finally, the issues as they play out in this area, Long Beach, South Bay area. We're going to start with the climate science and then shift to the human side and get to smaller geographical scales. The anthropogenic climate change, the human-caused climate change, which is what we're concerned about. But that's kind of hard to say to people, right? You say anthropogenic climate change to people and you go to college, So it's a mouthful, it's precise. Global warming, that's a big part of it. But that sounds kind of benign. Hey, goes to the beach. So it doesn't have the edge to it. We're facing climate disruption now. Okay? Patterns that we've learned to live with and we've adapted to are being completely thrown out of whack. Our settlements, all that kind of thing. Climate chaos might be even more. For example, when you get extremes that you don't expect, things happening in places that they didn't happen before, we have that. Last week, there was a place in Texas that was 97 degrees. It was having not a horrible heat wave, but a high heat. 2 days later, it had like a foot of snow. So we can see enormous swings. It's the disruption of the jet stream. Wow, wow, wow. So things that you don't expect. So the world hasn't come up with a good, clear term that's precise on what's happening and also conveys the kind of things that we're going through. So I'll be using it interchangeably. It's obviously climate change, global warming, probably those terms. So you have already had background on climate change. Okay, so you know this. We know that it is happening. The Earth is warming by these measurements. The increasing temperature of the air, rising sea levels, and the reductions in snow and ice cover. So that's very, very clear from measured and observed effects. You know the greenhouse effect already. We're doing it. Right? The rising levels of producing the production of greenhouse gases, and by primarily carbon dioxide, but some others. And that increases the atmosphere's ability to retain heat that's radiated out. So it doesn't leave as quickly as before. Greenhouse gas is good. Greenhouse effect is good because it makes it habitable planet. You push it up and we get into something that's not so good. But here's the part that we're doing. So we're watching the greenhouse gas concentrations rising. This part right here, this is the last 10,000 years, and then suddenly jumping into this zone here where we're just shooting up very, very high. And I'll get back to where we are, kind of the latest update towards the end of the talk. Here's how. Also, tell me if it's too slow, tell me if it goes too fast. If you want to pause and ask a question, you can do that anytime. But I'm fine if you call me Dean too. If you hate Dean, I want to know about that. So it comes from our daily life. Our world is based on the use of energy, right? To get around, to be comfortable, to work inside of a building with light, to grow our food. There's so much energy being used anywhere, and most of it is contributed to the buildup of greenhouse gases. So you can see the sectors for the transportation, heat, combustion industry, agriculture, that gets the end uses, and here are the greenhouse gases. Okay, so it's very different from other environmental issues, where sometimes you can find a particular culprit. You know, a particular firm or particular plant dumps something into a river. You know who did it, and you can make them stop. And they're doing something often that's against the law, and but we are in a system that causes it from our daily life. I think that's one thing that makes it hard. There's not a single villain that's doing it. There is a system that was a very good breakthrough before we knew the problem. Right? They made life a lot easier, but now we are stuck in it, and we are realizing the consequences of it. What's going to happen? Heavier precipitation, snow and rain, as well as more intense and longer droughts. You get both. Wet places get wetter, dry places get drier. So you get more extremes of that. We're going through the drought right now. This was one of the driest rain years in Southern California for a long time. We've had 2 fires, which are really just the first of 2. We're going to have a really terrible wildfire season.
Where is that? Absolute stream.
Why is that?
Where is it?
I don't know. This is from the UN panel that did the study. They were just using some illustrations, so the chairman was using it as his lecture. It could be a lot of places.
Yeah.
And they could have used a student union, right? A few years ago. We haven't been here that long. 2009, we had enormous rainfall, and it flooded the student union. It came down the hill, and there was more than the drainage system was set up to handle. So you come down the hill, and that enters like a cul-de-sac, a balcony sort of, and it just poured into the student union. So it could be all kinds of places. There are pictures from Long Beach. Many pictures are going through it. Last year, Manila was 1/3 underwater. It was on and on. So if you looked at impacts already. Okay, so if you think of it, there's this cause for increasing greenhouse gases, either by combustion or by removing it from where it's locked up in the soil. The plants raises it. That warms the atmosphere just a touch. But just a touch makes a very, very big difference. That goes to the Earth system, including the climate system, comes to the climate system, and then we get all these changes having to do with temperature, precipitation, humidity. So these are up at the top, more of the biogeophysical impacts, right? And here we start to shift into the way that it impacts people. So there are many, many of those. Getting warmer, so permafrost, glacier smell, more drought, more fire, more pests. We have dengue fever in Southern California. Now that's been showing up. That used to be just, in Southern California, that was just the name of a band, right? That's a Southeast Asian, there's a concentration. That is showing up in Southern California. Basically, I don't think it's mosquitoes for dengue fever, but mosquitoes don't die out during the winter because it's warm enough for more to survive. Usually, most of the mosquitoes die in the winter, and then a little bit starts to repopulate. But if it's a mild winter, more than survive. When it gets warm, there's a bigger explosion. So there's more where they used to be in a larger range where they are. So we get those kinds of diseases increasing. Snow cover declines. Our water is from snow, right? And on and on. So we've got changes in the climate system, and then that starts to change towards impacts that have a direct impact on us. So the 2 kind of impacts I'll be focusing on are health impacts and economic impacts. But I'll also post, you could post these.
I did.
Yeah, so just take notes if you want to bring up a point or look at it later. Any questions or comments so far? Okay. Impacts on health. A lot of different things. Food supply, obviously, water, the water supply, and then temperatures. Things don't grow well. Things are grown where the the regular climate is the best.